Hello everyone, welcome back to Skyblock News. Today is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be going over the patch notes for 0.19.3. This is going to be a more unique style of this type of video. It's not going to be just looking at my face. We're going to be going through all the patch notes one by one, and I'm going to be breaking them down through reading this, patch note list. Obviously, there's not a crazy amount of effort put into this type of video, but I've seen it be done pretty frequently for other types of games, and I don't expect this to be normal because I do like getting the videos out really quickly, but in situations like this, where we don't get the patch notes immediately, maybe I'll do some sort of reading like this just to go over the whole picture. So without further ado, let's launch right into it. Beginning with the Crystal Hollows, they state they brought many balance, QOL, and bug fixes to the Crystal Hollows, notably an Armadillo revamp. They state here that it was overperforming for its rarity and they want to maintain its unique gameplay while aligning it closer to its intended power level. Now it loses energy based on the block you are breaking, not necessarily on movement, as follows, with Mithril losing the least amount of energy per break, with Jasperg losing the most per break, and everything else somewhere in the middle, with other non-mining blocks losing a much lower amount. I think this was a pretty severe nerf. I've heard a lot of people say that Armadillo mining is effectively dead now. I don't know if it should necessarily be dead. They state below it that it now has up to 300 maximum energy depending on rarity from common to legendary. Maybe they can raise the maximum energy from 300 to like 450 or something if it ends up being too low, but something did need to happen to this pet. It was comically powerful for mining specifically. People were making crazy amounts of money for what is basically an early game or a mid game pet, and honestly it needed a change. It does regenerate 0.33% of its maximum energy per second, so that's obviously based on its rarity. Once again, pretty severe nerf to the pet. Moving down, we have some issues with, or changes rather, with the crystal rooms. The Mines of Devon ores now respawn on a 5-minute timer. They buffed the Mine of Devon loot chests slightly. Now, if I click on this, you can see that they changed a lot of things here. Most of the time, it gives you 1 to 4 flawed instead of a certain amount of rough material. I think this is good. It's gonna, greatly improve the overall chest variety in terms of how much money you're getting. So that's pretty good. The door to the Jungle Temple now stays open until the player obtains the crystal. Hallelujah, I think this is awesome. Previously, it would make it close the door every time you failed, which did suck. People were not happy about that. So that is a great change. And the Jungle Temple chests are now refilled every time the player uses a key. Once again, good stuff here. The Ruby and Jasper crystals are removed from the nucleus table if you already have them. Good stuff. That's just a fix. That's pretty nice. And honestly, these changes are pretty good. Although I have heard that the Mines of Devon are a little bit worse now for mining gold. We'll get more into that later. Moving on to other changes, we have a lot of good stuff here, and as you can see, there is a crazy amount of stuff on the screen. That's why I wanted to make this video. Gemstones now respawn even if destroyed by bombs. Incredible change, that's awesome. If you already have Heart of the Mountain 7, there's no point in giving extra Heart of the Mountain XP, so now the reward is replaced with a random amount between 2,000 and 5,000 of either Mithril or Gemstone powder, chosen at random. I think that's really great. Making it so that the player is able to gain more powder is awesome. This is part of their sort of quest that they went on with this update to make powder mining a lot better, and honestly they did succeed. It's not just this, there are some other changes as well, which really do add up over time. Moving right along here, we have a ton of changes. Obviously the treasure chests now despawn after they are looted, which I think is pretty alright. They changed and reworked the Kalhuiki tribe member AI. Now they don't necessarily become aggressive after just hitting them once. You have to hit them 3 times, which makes sense. But if you hit their young, they'll become instantly aggravated still. They also fixed a bug where they'd be aggressive for no reason whatsoever. They buffed the health of the Team Treasurite members from 13,000 to 18,000. I think that's fine. It's a little bit of a buff to them. I don't really know why they did that, but if they felt like their health was too low, so be it. They also increased the number of butterflies that spawn inside of Fairy Grotto rooms. I don't really have the exact numbers there, but if it is a pretty good buff, that's a good thing for the player base. Obviously, farming them previously was a little bit annoying. Eventually, you'd run out, and sometimes they wouldn't respawn in great numbers, and there'd be issues with that, so I'm glad that they increased the number here. They also changed the skin of the jungle heart. That's not really relevant, but you know what, it is a change, so it goes in the patch notes. They made the text different when dying to a Team Treasure member. I don't know what they did here, but that's something. They also slightly cheapened the Mithril Drill X326 crafting recipe, which now requires only half of the golden and mithril plates. I think this is a good change. Really wonderful stuff. They also changed the forge recipes for the mithril infused fuel tank and the titanium infused fuel tank. Now it requires 5 fuel tanks, 5 refined diamonds, 10 refined mithrils, or 10 refined titaniums, and a mithril infused fuel tank for the titanium infused one. They also made oil barrels sellable to NPCs for 1k coins each. That's fine, that's not really a big deal. They lowered the toughness of glass blocks and increased the drop rate of gemstones when mined from glass panes. I think that's a really good thing. That's really awesome. They also buffed the amount of XP you get based on your Heart of the Mountain level, so mining commissions now don't reward just 100 XP at level 1, or level 3 rather. They reward up to 400, which is the same as in the Crystal Hollows. That basically will affect the Dwarven mines the most. They also reduced the amount of mithril to mine in certain commissions. Now it's been dropped from 500 to 350 for the mithril miner one, and for specific areas it's been dropped from 350 to 250. Also, the wishing compass has been changed around a little bit. If it cannot find a structure, it now gives a chat message instead of just pointing to the center. I think that's really awesome. It's also now 1 use instead of 3 uses, so you'll now gain 3 of them instead of 1 through sources that drop them. Once again, pretty good stuff here. They can now be stacked, which is also really amazing, and they made it so that the Crystallize perk in the Heart of the Mountain works differently. It now gives 20 mining speed by default plus 6 per level. It also gives 20 mining fortune by default plus 5 per level. It also doesn't give you chances to deal damage to Star Sentries, because let's be honest, that's not really that relevant. They also added another perk to the Great Explorer in the Heart of the Mountain. Every 5 levels, the amount of lock-picking steps required to open a treasure chest goes down by 1. If you have the perk maxed out, you can open them instantly. This is an awesome change. I really like this. Even running around at level 11 or 12 for this perk, it's so much nicer to actually open chests. And I can only imagine that at level 20 it becomes comically easy, and obviously you don't have to worry about doing that little minigame that's kind of annoying. I think this is awesome. Great stuff, admins. Moving on, they added a comical amount of sources to get bits, including things like the Garden, Dungeons, the End, Dwarven Mines, Spider's Den, Crimson Isle, Crystal Hollows, Slayers, Spooky Festival, Trophy Fishing. All of those things now give bits. Kudra does as well, Diana does as well, Winter does as well, the Rift does also. Like, they added so many ways to get bits, and I think that's really cool for the game as well. Apparently, these do actually just summon bits out of thin air. I got that wrong in the video yesterday. So now there's another way to get bits, which I think is really cool. It's going to have to obviously require a cookie buff to claim them, but I do think that's good. It allows people to actually farm them a little bit if they want to, or if you just need a few extra bits but you can't get any more from the cookie that you currently have, you just do something in game and then you can get them. This is going to be good long term. Obviously people won't notice it immediately, but eventually they will. We went over this yesterday, so I'm going to kind of touch on it here. The Adventurer Saul thing has been added to the Dungeon Hub. Now people can remove the party restrictions and enter the catacombs on their own. There's also Auto Ready Up. I went over this yesterday as well, so I'm not going to go over too much here. All players will now be healed back to full HP when they enter a boss portal in dungeons. That's awesome. Spirit Leap and Infinite Leap can be used in trap rooms. That's amazing, God bless. They also renamed the Spirit Bow to the Spirit Short Bow, which I think is a good change. They improved the Summoning Ring and Reaper Sight's full messages, and they also now only have to have one player attempt a Slayer boss before being able to see its stats from Maddox. So what that basically means is you don't actually have to beat the boss to see the stats. If you're a player and you want to, actually see what you're going up against, just attempt it once and then you'll be fine. They also fixed the L NPC and supply stand not being left clickable in Kudra. They fixed some other issues with Kudra as well. The dungeon start pet rule was not working properly. The ballista part piles were blocking shots. Stuff like that happens occasionally, and those were all fixed. They updated a bunch of products here for the Bazaar. The Ascension Rope and Wishing Compass was added. They basically organized things a little bit better. I'm going to kind of touch on this because I went over it in a previous video. but regardless, they did make these changes, which I think were really good. The grouped icons were also updated a lot. They were made to show the items that are inside a little bit better, and they'll also show the buy and sell price on the front if you're using advanced mode, which, by the way, if you're not, I recommend turning it on. It is so useful. They also added the insta-sell block list. Once again, not a super huge deal, or rather, I went over in a previous video, so I'm not going to touch on it too much, but I do think this is a great change. Moving on to other changes, they added 22 new Rift achievements, many of which are retroactive, which I think is pretty nice. They also allow you to see your Skyblock achievements from within your Skyblock menu. Once again, a good change. They made it so some sack notifications are a little bit better, notably for items being added to and being removed from sacks. Basically, for new players, it was unintuitive that items were automatically added to sacks and sometimes even removed. This will improve the feedback from these invisible actions, which I think is great. They also shortened the lore for some enchanted sacks. Once again, that's good. And they added golden carrots to the agronomy sack, which is nice. They added the Bejeweled Collar pet item, which grants 25 mining speed and 10 mining fortune. It can be forged in the Dwarven mines for a bejeweled handle and 4 refined mithril. They updated the Bee Pets perks. I already went over this, and now gives 30 of farming, foraging, and mining fortune. That's really awesome. They also added the Do Not Disturb thing to the abaphones. This will prevent you from being called by some certain people that are annoying in the Crimson Isle and some other places as well. I think this is really good, and hopefully they don't add more NPCs that can call you, because God, I hope they never do that again. But you can only do this on abaphone models 12 Pro Giga and above, which is a little sad. I would have liked to see this on all of the abaphones. They added the Weirder Tuba to the museum. That's also a good change. They added the Blaze Hat, Sea Lantern Hat, and Magma Fish Hat to the museum as well. And they also shrunk the museum zone slightly to make it easier to use abilities around the area, which I think that's a good change as well. They improved the lore of the Jerry Sheen gun. They improved some other things related to bulk buying arrows, which is nice. Now you can actually bulk buy arrows in the weaponsmith shop. Good change there. They added additional lore to the Archfiend dice to hint that they are rigged. I think they needed to do that. Previously, people would actually think that they had a 1 in 6 chance of winning, and it was like 1 in 25, and that was not really that nice. They also made a bunch of other changes to some mining equipment things like this, notably giving the jungle pickaxe efficiency 5 by default, which is really nice. They also added a promising shovel to Rusty, whatever that ends up meaning. They reduced the cooldown of the chicken hat from 20 seconds to 5 seconds for some reason, and they also nerfed the elephant pet, the mushroom cow, and also some other perks as well to give less farming fortune. I think this is mostly fine. Farming is already in a pretty good spot money-wise. If they're going to be nerfing Dillo, they're going to probably want to nerf farming a little bit too. They seem to be wanting to lower the amount of money that people can make through these standardized sources, you know, things that reward the same amount of money every hour or close to the same amount. Things like dungeons can still like peak at a crazy amount of money, but obviously they don't want the whole game to rely on people just doing these monotonous things and not really interacting with the more interesting stuff. They also moved the grappling hook to String Collection 4, that's fine, and also potion effects are no longer removed on death, which means that Legendary Bingo perk needs to be changed, which is pretty interesting. Alrighty, moving right along, we have a bunch of other interesting changes, notably related to Slayers and other parts of the game. Talking or calling Maddox will now show all of these Slayer quests without needing to cancel the current one, which I think is pretty good. You can also preview the Slayer menu from the combat skill menu, which is really good stuff. They also made it so a message will be sent after killing a boss 4 times in a row, warning that killing it again won't give you any rewards. This is under Slayer quests and collections, although this has nothing to do with Slayers. This scared me when I first saw it, but in reality it's to do with the Crimson Isle mini-bosses, which I don't think you can kill more than 4 of without not getting loot anymore. This one's weird, it shouldn't be under this section, and it scared the crap out of me when I already saw it, but it's not actually as bad as it seems. Also, I'm going to kind of be skimming through the rest of this because there's so many changes, many of which don't really mean anything. They increased how often it rains in the Spider's Den, which is pretty cool. They also made it so the enchanted string recipe is 160 string for consistency reasons. They also nerfed the cost of the enchanted bone meal recipe by half, not for consistency, but because it costs way too much. They also made some pretty interesting changes to a bunch of enemy stats as well, nerfing a lot of things. I think the Automaton one is pretty big for some people, and also the Key Guardian one is also fairly nice. New players will now be prompted to talk to Tia after they find their first few fairy souls, which is pretty nice, and the Enderstone Protector and Special Zealots will no longer despawn when dragons die. That one's a good change. I really like to see that one, but I don't think it's that huge of a deal. Obviously, it's going to be nice in those niche cases, but yeah, I don't really think that's that crazy. Moving right along, we have some other pretty interesting changes, notably the addition of the Lapis Pickaxe, which I went over the other day. They also did some other pretty neat random things, notably the Golden Dragon eggs now show if pet candy has been used on them. That is probably the most significant part of this section, other than maybe Don Espresso now consuming all of the mithril, which is a more efficient way of doing the event. Also, the raffles now despawn tickets when picking a winner, which is also pretty nice. Moving down to the final sections, there are so many things here. They added more of all tree types to the park, which is pretty cool. They now have a 2 copper minimum for garden visitors. This is an embarrassingly low number. I think it should be at least 10 or 15. I don't know why it's 2. It might as well be nothing at that point. They also decreased the copper cost of crop upgrades, say that 5 times fast, and refunded the previously spent coins. It's now 2,000 instead of 5,000 for level 8, and 4,000 instead of 10,000 for level 9. They also better explain the dark auction, apparently, using Sirius's dialogue, which is pretty cool. They added area discovery chat messages, which is pretty nice, and you now need to be level 10 to participate in a bingo event. They also removed Piscary from the experimentation table, which is a little weird, and there's also a bunch of other things here. Notably that the North Stars gained message is now hoverable for some reason. Finally, they also made it so that pet candy used on a pet will only be hidden if the pet tier is legendary or higher. And then there's a metric ton of bug fixes. You can go through this. There's so much stuff here. Just a comical amount of fixes. After finishing reading all of these patch notes, my initial reaction was, wow, that is a lot of things, and it is indeed a lot of things. There was just so much to go through here, so many big changes, so many medium-sized changes, and so many bug fixes too. This is easily one of the best quality of life updates we've ever gotten for Skyblock, and I hope we see more like it in the future, because honestly, they've been making updates fairly quickly. This entire summer, we've been getting update after update, starting with the Rift update, which happened at the very beginning of the summer, and now we're already at 1.19.3, which is pretty fast-paced. On top of that, we've gotten things like solo dungeons, which people have wanted forever. The Abaphone Do Not Disturb thing, which people have wanted forever. Big mining changes, which are amazing. So I'm really happy to see that the admins are working hard. They're doing some great work here, and I hope they can keep that work up moving into the next part of the year, moving into when they have to eventually release the foraging update, because I think at this rate, it is going very, very well. At the end of the day, though, my name is Derailious. Thank you so much for watching this video till the end, and look to the future, fellas, because I will see you then.